All right, so my name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, and we do have a teacher joining us for the first time today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Since mid-March, when classes went out all over Canada and the States, we have done over 165 broadcasts featuring scientists, explorers, and amazing facilities from across the globe. So thank you so much for continuing to tune in on YouTube as we highlight such cool people and places. Today, we are continuing our series of the Ripleys Aquarium of Canada, which may be closed to the public in the heart of downtown Toronto, but their animal work and care goes on. So we are joined live by Caitlin, an educator there today, and she's going to share us a little bit of what they're doing there with their zebra sharks. So we're going to do a live zebra shark feeding behind the scenes in an area where the public doesn't typically get to go. So I'm very excited. I hope you guys are too. Quick housekeeping note, you can also join in and share questions on Slido with event code SHARK. So if you want to do that, there's some polls and quizzes and games you can take part in. Without further ado, thank you so much for joining us, Caitlin, and take us away.
Hi, Jesse. Thank you for having us. So the voice that you hear behind the camera is me, Caitlin. I'm one of the educators here at the aquarium. However, the lovely face you see in front of you is Haley, and she is one of our aquarists. She's actually going to be feeding our zebra sharks. What do you have in there, Haley? I have some capelin, small fish, some bonito cut from a big tuna-like fish, and some mahi-mahi. All right, so some capelin, bonito, and mahi-mahi. And we're also going to be watching Haley do some enrichment with our sharks. So you want to go ahead and get on in? It might take a minute for them to get started, but we'll be looking up right now. All right, perfect. So I'm just going to do a little adjustment. Please pardon our walls, everyone. That white stuff you see is just salt that has built up around there. So we can't do anything about that because our water is very, very salty. So right now we are actually on top of our reef shark exhibit. Now there's a few different species of shark in here, but today we are going to be focusing on our zebra shark. In addition to the zebra sharks in here, we also have white tip and black tip reef sharks, as well as some smaller white-spotted bamboo sharks, epaulet sharks, and two types of wobbegong. They generally stay towards the bottom of the tank, so we probably won't see them today. But here are our two zebra sharks coming up all ready to get some food and some enrichment. So right now we already went through what they're eating, but they do also get a wide variety of other things like mackerel, a few different other types of fish, as well as some squid. Bonito is their favorite. So that is something they are getting today, right now. So hopefully we'll get some good enrichment. And as you can see, they are hand-fed by Haley. We generally do enrichment with our zebra sharks 2 times a week. And basically what we're trying to do here is something called tactile desensitization using positive reinforcement. Now I know I threw some big terms at you, so let me just take a moment to explain this. Basically, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get them used to being handled and close to our aquarists and our vet team. And we do this by basically touching them and getting them to come up to us. And this is very beneficial for them and us because it's a great way for them to be comfortable with us and to come up to us in case we need to check them for cuts, scrapes, we need to weigh them. We need to do a physical to check their overall health. And we want to do that in a way that doesn't stress them out. So by having this kind of tactile reinforcement with them, it gets them used to us touching them and handling them. And basically this is something akin to training your dog or cat to go to the vet. As some of you might know, if you have pets at home, a trip to the vet can sometimes be a little stressful. And by doing this kind of positive reinforcement, we're really mitigating their stress. We're developing a very trusting relationship with these animals. That way, if we do need to bring them up to take a blood sample or to weigh them, they're very comfortable with us doing that. Now, their training is always evolving. So usually after a few months, Haley will go in and sort of analyze their progress, see how they're doing, and see if we need to adjust their positive reinforcement and their enrichment in any way, or if we want to keep it the same. Now, Haley, in addition to being one of our aquarists, she's actually the Assistant Enrichment Training Coordinator. She's got a bit of a mouthful there with that title, but she does a lot of the enrichment with our animals, comes up with the programs in order to have some enrichment. So she's very experienced with this. Now, our two zebra sharks in the exhibit we did get from another aquarium. We tend to trade animals amongst other AZA accredited aquaria. And for those of you who don't know, AZA is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And basically, we're members of this. And what it means is we get inspected on a regular basis. They make sure that we are providing the best care possible to these animals. And we usually, we always trade with other aquariums that are also AZA accredited. That way, if we're sending animals off, we know that they are going to receive top-notch care as well. So basically, also, what Haley is trying to do here is essentially flip them over. Now, I'll explain this. I know it does sound a little weird when we say we're trying to flip our sharks over. So essentially, when you flip these sharks over, Haley's obviously doing it very gently, they enter something called tonic immobility. Now, this does naturally happen out in the ocean. I'll explain that more in a second. But tonic immobility is basically like a short state of hypnosis. So it's kind of like a little temporary state of inactivity. And in the wild, this usually happens during mating. Male sharks will actually bite specific spots on the female's tail, and it triggers her to enter this tonic immobility. And it's a way that they can breathe. So Haley's seeing if she can mimic this, which she's obviously being very successful at, by gently touching their tails in order to trigger this response. So clearly, yeah, Haley's doing an awesome job. Good job, Haley. And then now that they've mastered this, we'll probably do some increased enrichment in the future. And the goal here is to be able to have them comfortable laying in a stretcher or having them come out of the water for a short period of time in the event that we do need to weigh them. And we do need to weigh them. It's very important for us to be able to know the weights of our larger animals because we feed them a percentage of their body weight. So we always need to have up-to-date records of how much they weigh. That way we can adjust their diet and their food if necessary. So that's a little bit about what's going on with this enrichment. I can give you some other background information on our zebra sharks. And the first thing I'm going to do is tell you that they are often confused with leopard sharks. And generally this happens because here in Canada at this aquarium, we call them zebra sharks, but in places like Australia, they call them leopard sharks. It's a very common thing to have animals' common names get confused in different parts of the world. So our teachers joining us from California may also know them as leopard sharks themselves. So our zebra sharks are usually born dark brown and they have small white bars across their bodies, so they kind of do look like zebras. That's where they get the name. Obviously, they don't look like that now, and that's because as they age and they mature, they start to become this yellowish color that you see here. And they start to lose those stripes, and it kind of becomes spots now. So they do change a little bit. They are also related, well, they're in the carpet shark family. So they get that name because they kind of look like carpet too, carpet design. Not the most original thing to name. You can find our zebra sharks all over the coral reef areas in the Western Pacific, the Indian Ocean, as well as the Red Sea. So lots of different areas. They are nocturnal, so they do tend to rest during the day at the bottom of the ocean on the ocean floor. And they actually rest in a very specific orientation. They usually will actually face the current so that they can pump water over their gills in order to breathe. If you've seen some of our other explorers, you might have heard us talking about some sharks that need to always be moving in order to breathe. These ones don't. They have something called a spherical, and basically if they come back up, they'll try and look just behind their eyes, and you'll notice something that looks like a hole in their head. So, does not want to show us. But those holes that you see behind their eyes are the sphericals, and basically it's a muscle and a pump that will pull water out of the ocean and pass it over their gills in order to breathe, which allows them to remain still. And not all sharks have that additional muscle, so it's very beneficial for these ones that live in these complex environments. Now, the zebra sharks in here are both female. If we did have a male, the way you would tell the difference is just underneath their pelvic fins. So we'll have one come up and I'll try and do my best to guide you with it. So if you see those fins at the front of their body, those are pectoral fins. The fins just behind that are pelvic fins. And if this was a male, there, Haley's showing you. Perfect, thank you, Haley. If this was a male, right above those pelvic fins, you would see these two little finger-like projections called claspers. And that is how you tell the different genders apart. Now, we only have females. However, these sharks are really, really unique in the way they reproduce. They are egg-laying sharks. There are several species of egg-laying sharks. And one of our sharks has actually been laying several eggs recently. They usually will have about 40 to 80 eggs a year. And their eggs have kind of a sticky, adhesive layer. So in the wild, they would stick their eggs to the coral or to the rock in their habitat and just leave them to develop on their own into a baby shark. Now, kind of like chickens, they still do produce those eggs even when they're not fertilized. But here's the cool thing about our zebra sharks. They don't actually need a male in order to fertilize their eggs, which I think is awesome. So some of them are parthenogenic, and it has been reported that they've produced a fertilized egg without the presence of a male, which I think is just amazing. Now, you might also notice that they do have features that allow them to inhabit these complex coral reef environments. If you take a look at their tail, you'll notice that it's more rounded and it's not the typical sort of fork shape that many other sharks and fish have. And it's this rounded tail that allows them to swim in and out of these complex coral reef environments. So that helps. Also, their spiracles help. Now, our sharks also, these zebra sharks tend to have relatively small jaws compared to other sharks. They only have about 30 teeth on the top and 30 teeth on the bottom. And their teeth are actually quite small. And they're oriented in a way that's more suited for crushing and crunching things rather than piercing and shredding those very sharp, serrated teeth that you think of when you typically think of a shark. So theirs are oriented in a way that's more beneficial for crushing. And this helps them because they usually feed on things like shellfish, shrimp, snails, some small fish, but typically things that would have a hard exoskeleton around their body. And you can imagine if they had really sharp pointed teeth and bit into something that had a hard exoskeleton, they might break their teeth. So having these sort of smaller, blunted teeth is a great way for them to go after their prey and not lose all their teeth. One other thing they have that really helps them hunt is this sixth sense that a lot of sharks and elasmobranchs like rays and sawfish have. If they do come up and you look sort of around their mouth area, you'll see these things that look like small freckles. Those are called ampullae of Lorenzini. And what these are their electroreceptors. So if everybody at home does me a favor and they flex their muscles right now, you're actually causing small electric impulses to trigger that reaction. Every time your heart beats, it's from a small electric impulse. And these sharks can sense all those tiny little electric impulses that pass through their body. So right now, they know exactly where Haley is. They don't even need to use their eyes if they don't want to, because she's moving around and she's having all these little tiny electric impulses pass through her body. And this helps them find their prey because oftentimes their prey would be buried a little bit in the sediment or in the sand at the bottom of the ocean. So in case they don't see it, they can always sense it using their electroreceptor. Now, one other thing I also want to mention before we get to some questions is that zebra sharks are considered an endangered species with the IUCN. And unfortunately, the main reason for that is human activity. In addition to being caught for their fins that are often used in shark fin soup, they're also prized for meat as well as their liver. And they're also accidentally caught in bycatch and drift nets. So unfortunately, we do need to help this population rebound, but I'm sure we can do it. All right, Jesse, do you have any questions for me?
I have lots of questions for you. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Caitlin, for such an awesome presentation. Try when we're doing questions to come a little closer to the iPad if you can, because the audio is a little tricky in this big cavernous back of house space. But that was awesome, and thanks so much for such amazing work with the sharks. So Before we dive in with questions, a quick note. Of course, I'll be taking them from our live teachers joining us on Zoom. For everyone on YouTube, let me know where you're joining from, share questions, and we will take as many as we can for Caitlin today. But our first question is from Huxley, and it's how big do these sharks get?
How big do the sharks get?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, normally they can get over 10 feet, but let me ask Haley how big ours are. Haley? All right, so about 2 full meters they are. We're gonna change measurements on you.
Super cool. So about 6.5 to 7 feet or so. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. I forgot to note too, for everyone joining in on Slido, not only can you share questions, but we will be starting the quiz in a second. So if you're ready for the quiz, I will begin that in just a second. But I'm also going to go to Mr. Hill to kick us off with a question from his class or himself. So Mr. Hill joining us live. You have a query? Go for it.
All right. Thanks, Jesse. Kylie in grade 6 wants to know if these sharks have smooth skin or rough skin. She said some sharks have different types of skin. She's dying to know.
Yeah.
That is an awesome question. And the person to ask is in the water. What does their skin feel like? Yeah, so their skin is very, very rough. It's kind of like sandpaper, but it does change depending on the way you're essentially petting them. If you go from head to tail, it's decently smooth, but if you go the other way, it is very, very rough and very prickly.
Super cool. I'm so glad we got that question so early on. On some of the bigger sharks, you can actually cut your hand going the opposite way on their skin. It is so rough in that direction. It's very cool, sort of like knife blades facing backwards. And in fact, I encourage people tuning in at home to check what shark skin looks like under a microscope. It is fantastic and super neat. All right, let's go to Miss Stevens joining us in Calamasa, California. Miss Stevens, if you have a question for us, go for it.
I want to know, what do they primarily eat? I noticed she was feeding them little fish, but what do they like?
Fantastic. Favorite food, Caitlin?
Well, here their favorite food is bonito. We feed them lots of different types of fish that we basically cut into small pieces so that it can fit in their mouth. We also will feed them shrimp sometimes and squid. In the wild, they feed on a lot of the same things: small fish, lots of shellfish, snails, shrimp, lots of things.
Fantastic. Great, guys. Huge shout out to Huxley, who did the best on our quiz on Slido. That's fantastic. And a note too, that we have teachers in full classes joining in from Virginia, Minnesota, British Columbia, across Ontario, and more. So we're so excited to have you guys all in today. We really appreciate you joining us. So let's take a question from online. Monique wants to know, where are the sharks' mothers? And did these sharks come from the ocean to get to this tank, or were they born in captivity?
So these sharks actually came to us from one of our other aquariums. Let me check in with Haley if they were born in that aquarium or not. So they did come to us originally from Australia, and then they were housed in our Myrtle Beach aquarium for a little while before we opened up and they came to visit us.
Very cool. Some world traveling sharks we've got. How neat.
Yeah.
All right. Nicole wants to know online, how much food do they eat per week?
Oh, okay. That's definitely a question for Haley. How much food do they eat per week? Any poundage, approximate poundage? So they eat about 4% of their body weight, which is about 6 pounds per week.
Yeah.
Give or take.
By the way, I really appreciate you repeating the answers. We can't hear Haley from the way down there for whatever reason. So thanks for the tag team effort. This is awesome. All right. Peyton on Slido wants to know, how old is your oldest shark?
Ooh, in this tank or just any species that we have here?
You can cover both. Why not?
Oh, wow. All right. Haley was on it. 7 years old in this tank. Oh, yeah. Never mind. How old they are? Okay, sorry, I stand corrected. So we don't have a great way to gauge their age right now when they're alive. Unfortunately, the easiest way to gauge a fish's age is when they're dead. However, we're estimating they're about 15 years old.
Very cool. And for people tuning in at home, so we've covered this before with Ripley's Aquarium, but the oldest sharks in the ocean can get over 200 years old. They're some of the longest lived animals in the entire world, which is fantastic. All right, I'm going to go back to Mr. Hill for a question. If you want to come back up again, go for it.
All right, thanks, Jesse. Question from Olivia in grade 5. She wants to know if these sharks school in the wild or if they live solitary lives.
Yeah. Awesome.
That is a great question. Often they live very solitary lives. Most sharks don't school. Most sharks tend to live by themselves and inhabit their own sort of area, and they generally only come together when they're going to breed.
Okay, very cool. Let's go to Miss Stevens' class again. If you have a question for us from your group, go for it.
Let's see. What part of the world are they from?
Yeah, where do we find these guys, Caitlin?
You can find them in lots of places. So these ones, like Kaylee said, are from Australia, but you can find them all over the Western Pacific area and the Indian Ocean.
Okay. This is a simple question from Rocky Online. What are their names? Do they have names?
That is a great question. Haley, what are their names? All right, so I feel sick repeating this first one, but one of them is named after a Philadelphia Flyers player. So yeah, exactly. We don't support that. So one of them is named Big E for Eric Carlson, shout out. And the other one is named Annabeth after someone that we actually know here at the aquarium.
That's funny. Well, all the Pennsylvania Live viewers just instantly dropped out of the session with that insult. Here you go. Let's take a question from Cordelia on YouTube. And she asks, what is the biggest challenge your team has gone through at the aquarium? I guess dealing with all these animals or bringing sharks in. Is there a challenge that jumps to mind? It's a deep question.
Ooh. All right, I'm gonna let Haley answer this one. What is the biggest challenge that you've had here taking care of the animals at the aquarium in general? It's a deep question, good one. All right, good answers. So Haley said her biggest challenge is keeping up to date with all her knowledge of the animals and trying to make sure that they have the best experience possible. And Haley, just to shout out to her, she is a fantastic aquarist who is also always trying to learn more about her animals and to, again, make sure that she's taking the best care of them as she can.
Nice. Well, thank you to Haley for that lovely answer. All right, Micah, age 4, asked a question that I'm sure a lot of people are thinking on YouTube, and that is, why don't the sharks bite people when you touch them? So you can field this one, Caitlin.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, we just spent the last 15 or so minutes watching Haley hand feed our sharks. So yeah, it's a great thought to know why they're not biting her or she's not scared of them. But these sharks and many other species of sharks don't actually want to bite humans or attack humans. They've kind of gained this negative reputation over the years, but you're more likely to be struck by lightning than you are to be killed by a shark. I'm sure Jesse also knows some of these statistics where you're more likely to be crushed by a vending machine than you are to be killed by a shark. Yep. So unfortunately, they've just gained this negative reputation over time and with some sensationalization through the media.
Yeah, one of the things we like to highlight whenever there's a shark session is something like a few 100 million sharks are taken out of the ocean every year by people. And typically in any given year, about 4 to 6 people will be killed in a shark attack. Now that's tragic, no question, but comparatively to coconuts, trains, selfies, vending machines, toilets, far fewer people are injured by sharks than any of those things. So it's just worth keeping in mind. And with any animal, you want to respect it when you're in the wild. And we really appreciate getting to share how beautiful and wonderful sharks are and not necessarily a dangerous creature. So fantastic, Caitlin and Haley. All right, I'm going to go back to both our live teachers for one more question each, and then we will wrap up from there. So Mr. Hill, if you want to take us off with another question, go for it.
All right, thanks, Jesse. Adam in grade 6 wants to know, how big are the shark eggs when they are laid?
Yeah.
All right. Well, actually, that segues into a really good thing because Haley is holding an egg right there in that container. So Haley, about how big are they? About 15 to 20 centimeters. Gotta stay underwater. So about 15 to 20 centimeters.
That's a crazy huge egg. That's the biggest egg we've ever featured on this ever. I didn't even know shark eggs got that big. And I worked at the aquarium for years. That is awesome. Look at that thing.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, so much. Sorry, I pinned the video on YouTube. You can check that out.
And this one was laid by Big E. So because it's parthenogenesis, it's kind of like a clone of her.
Cool. Yeah, if you missed that, that was a part where the audio was a little iffy earlier, but the sharks can actually lay fertilized eggs without having a male involved. So they're basically like clones of the shark, which is, so you saw a giant egg of a clone today, which you probably didn't expect when you came in on our zebra shark session. That's awesome. If you ever get a chance to go to Ripley's Aquarium of Canada in person, you can see some of their shark eggs in some of their tanks, which is super neat. And in general, I encourage everyone tuning in today to look up shark eggs at home. They are some of the most amazing and wicked awesome things in the entire natural world. So very cool. Miss Stevens, if you want to end us off with the last question, go for it.
Is there anything special about the teeth in comparison to the other sharks?
Yeah. Anything special about their teeth, Caitlin? These guys.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Thank you. Lots of sharks actually do have different styles of teeth, and it really depends on what they're going to be eating. Lots of larger sharks that will feed on big fish, and even other sharks tend to have those serrated, very sharp teeth that you'll think about. These zebra sharks tend to have very small teeth relative to other sharks, and they're a little bit more blunt than you would think of from other larger sharks. And that's because they feed on shellfish. So they need these blunt teeth to break open exoskeletons and shells.
Thank you, Haley, for the physical demonstration as well. We've had all manner of different sharks featured on Ripley's aquarium programs. So we've seen sand tiger shark teeth, which are really sharp and pointy for catching fast fish. And again, look this up online when you're done. Different shark teeth are really, really cool and make for some amazing imagery. For everyone tuning in on YouTube and for our live teachers, thank you so much. And Caitlin and Haley, what a fantastic presentation. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having us, Jesse.
Awesome. All right. So for everyone tuning in at home, some ways that you can learn even more, go to Ripley's Aquarium of Canada's website. They've got some great resources that you can use to learn more about what they do there and about aquatic animals in general. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube, check us out on social media, or if you like what we're doing with digital education, you can donate on our website as well. Do check out our YouTube channel for ever more Ripley's Aquarium sessions. In addition to some coming up in the next few weeks, we've done over 50 of them over the last few years. So whether it's sharks or stingrays or seahorses, there's an animal for you that we've covered in the last few months and years. Caitlin, thank you so much again for joining us. And Haley, have a wonderful rest of your day, ladies.
Thanks, Jesse. Bye.
See y'all soon.